Now, it's been a while since I reviewed a mini PC on the channel, and it just so happened to line up that I was looking for an actual mini PC like this one to power my home arcade. And then GMKtec reached out with an Intel processor-based mini PC for review, and I said yes, let's take a look at it. This one is a bit different than the ones I'm used to. They're usually square, and this one is just a rectangle, which is very interesting. I don't know if it makes any difference, but it is interesting. It's longer, it's a little bit bigger, but still does all the same things. Taking a look at what's in the box, and we have the mini PC, of course, alongside the power brick and power cable, HDMI cable, and VESA bracket to attach this to the back of a PC monitor if you wanted to. I actually think you can mount this to really anything with this little bracket. At least it seems that way. Looking at the ports on the PC, on the front we have two USB 3.2 Gen 2 10GB per second ports, a 3.5mm audio jack, and the power button. On the back we have the DC power in, two USB 4 40GB per second PD 3.0 100 watt, DisplayPort 1.4 4K 60 ports. Then we have an HDMI 2.1 port, USB 2.0 port, a single Ethernet port, and a security lock. Notably missing here is an Oculink port, as well as having only one single Ethernet port, which for me isn't a massive issue because I'm not using it for anything that uses dual LAN, but I know there's a lot of mini PCs out there that use dual LANs and have them as a feature. There does look to be plenty of airflow. There is vents on each side and the bottom as well, so you have quite a bit of airflow that can go in and out. Let's take a look at the full specs now, and we have the Intel Core Ultra 7 256V powering the entire thing. This comes with 8 cores and 8 threads from 2.2 GHz up to 4.8 GHz. On the GPU side, it is the Intel Arc 140V. My understanding is this processor is pretty much the exact same as the one in the MSI Claw 8 AI Plus, minus the fact that the included RAM is different. Performance should be the same otherwise, and I really kind of saw pretty much the same on my end. On the RAM side, we have 16GB of LPDDR5X RAM up to 8,533 megatransfers per second. This RAM is soldered on and it is non-upgradable, which is a negative here for sure. Then we have a PCIe 4.0 M2 2280 SSD, with my model here having a 1TB built in. There is a second slot for another M2 2280, but that'll run at an X2 instead of an X4. Wi-Fi 6E with Bluetooth 5.2, and surprisingly, Windows 11 Pro is pre-installed on here by default, which made me really happy that I didn't have to put that on myself, because I love to remote into these little mini PCs, and that helps quite a bit. Price-wise for all of this, well, the base 512GB SSD model is $670 US, so about half the cost of an MSI Claw 8 AI Plus. Doing a teardown of this thing was pretty simple, at least for my purposes of just accessing the second NVMe slot, which will house my Batacera SSD. It was one single screw right on the bottom, and then you pull off the green plastic housing, and you're right there. You have the CMOS battery that's easily accessible, both NVMe slots, and even the Wi-Fi chip. Next up, I wanted to jump into the BIOS to see what we have access to, and the main option here is the power limit select. By default, it is set to balanced, which is a 20 watt TDP limit, but you can change this to silent for 15 watt or performance, which is 30 watt up to 37 watt. I did set this to performance for all of my testing for today. The mini PC was silent enough that I didn't really see a reason to use anything other than performance. Otherwise, we jump over to the Windows side, and after updating the graphics driver, we do have access to XeSS, frame generation up to 4x if you want, and you can adjust a ton of other things in the Intel software as needed. But everything was as default for today. I do find the Intel software is kind of way behind AMD and NVIDIA, at least NVIDIA for sure, but you do have the normal options in the Intel software that you would want. Running Time Spy, and we got a score of 3,683 here, which was actually a bit lower than the average score, so there is likely a lot of room for improvements here and optimizations that you can do if you want to go down that road. Then I jumped into some games with some Final Fantasy VII Remake. 1080p, low settings, and just walking around Sector 7, we were sticking to that 60 FPS mark for the most part, which is definitely the sweet spot for this PC. Looking at benchmarks with Cyberpunk, we got a 57 average FPS at 1080p, low settings with XeSS on auto, and actually playing the game felt great as well. We are maxing out the TDP, of course, and this mini PC isn't super loud when you're doing so either. I could easily play the entire game like this, it ran really well, and I didn't really have an issue with it. Shadow of the Tomb Raider was up next with a 62 average at 1080p, low settings. Pretty impressed overall with the power of the Intel processor, and it seems like 1080p low settings is going to get you about 60 FPS with this PC across a number of games. Ahead of the launch of Forza Horizon 6, we have Forza Horizon 5 here at 1080p, no XeSS enabled, high preset, and we're at 62 FPS average. That number only gets better with optimizations or using XeSS if you wanted to. Black Myth Wukong is up next, a harder game to run than most, of course, and at 1080p, low settings with XeSS on, we got a 39 FPS average, which is way better than I actually expected for Black Myth Wukong. It is close enough that you might want to try out the frame generation at an X2 maybe, and you might not feel it. On the emulation side, Burnout Revenge at 1080p did not miss a beat. And like I said before, I've been using this mini PC in my arcade cabinet running all sorts of PS2 games without issue. God of War was more of the same, just no issues at all running any sort of PS2, and that's good to see. I've had some questionable mini PCs in the past that could not do PS2. On the PS3 side with Soul Calibur, it was more of the same. Besides the RPCS3 shader compilation, once that's done, games ran full speed. Obviously, RPCS3 compatibility varies game by game, but trying a handful of games, they all ran pretty well. Ratchet & Clank being a good example of a game that really needs to load all of the textures at the beginning. And so you're going to have a lot of shader compilation until that loads up, and then after that, it runs really well. Asura's Wrath ran pretty much full speed, once again with the shader compilation, but otherwise I had no issues at all. And then lastly, to make the jump to Switch emulation, I was curious how it would fare on this device. But at this point, I had a good idea that I would have no issues at all. And yeah, docked mode here, testing out Fire Emblem Engage, and it didn't skip a beat, it ran super well. And it was the same story for a little bit more fast-paced game like Super Mario Wonder. As far as emulation is concerned, on my end, the K13 runs everything, at least that I threw at it. And it better, because it is running everything inside of my arcade cabinet. I hooked this up to my AtGames Legends Ultimate, and I've been using it for a bit now to power Batocera on there, and I've hooked up my guitars, Rock Band drum set, Taiko drums, everything, and it hasn't skipped a beat. Even on the Batocera side, no issues with PS2, no issues with Wii, and so on. It has been an awesome use case on my end for powering this entire thing, and I have made use of every port of this mini PC for my personal use cases here. So really everything has been tested when it comes to this mini PC. There has been a lot of mini PCs in the world. I have reviewed a bunch of them, and there's just so many different options out there. I think with this one, it isn't the latest and greatest. It isn't a Strix Halo type device. It isn't anything like that. But if you like the power of an ROG Ally, an MSI Claw, a Steam Deck, better than a Steam Deck, all that sort of thing, and you want a docked experience of that, this is kind of what you're going to get. You're not going to get the latest and greatest games running at the highest settings, but you'll be able to play most games out there at low settings, 1080p. If not, you might have to drop it to 720, but from what you saw today, for the most part, 1080p low settings gets you what you need. But anyways, that's going to be it for today. Let me know in the comments below, what are your thoughts on mini PCs? I have a specific use case for this one. It's going into that arcade cabinet. That's what I use it for. But what do you use yours for? That's what I want to know. Hope you liked the video, and I hope this helped. Don't forget to like and sub to help the channel grow. Come join me on the Discord to talk all about retro gaming, and hope you all have a good one.